Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Katie Rowley with the NOAA Central Library, and I'm excited to be hosting our talk today on economic valuation trainings and project consultations, lessons learned. This is being presented by Dr. Lauren Knapp, on contract at the Office for Coastal Management, who's an economist, and Kate Quigley, Office of Coastal Management, also an economist. I'm going to stumble over that word several times today. Dr. Knapp is an environmental economist trained in various methods from cost-benefit analysis to ecosystem services valuation and stated preference estimation. She helps on efforts to value marine economies, train local communities on how to use economics to inform their decision-making, capture benefit data for natural coastal infrastructure, and comprehensively value U.S. coral reefs. Kate Quigley is a natural resource environmental economist with the Office of Coastal Management as well, and her areas of expertise are benefit cost analysis, policy analysis, and blue economy accounting. Now, before we get started, a few logistics. We are recording this webinar, so if you have a question and you put that in the chat, we will record that and make sure that our speakers see that after the fact, but we will also be asking the questions at the end of the seminar. And since we are recording, if you do need to step away or if you would like to share this with a colleague after the fact, it'll be up on the library's YouTube channel. And since you are muted, please place all of those questions that you have into the question panel. Now, if there are any audio or visual issues, as in you can't hear me or you can't see the screen, please try logging off the platform and back on using that same link. It should solve most of your issues. If you still are having issues, you can always chat me using that question panel, and I will try and troubleshoot with you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lauren Knapp to get us started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie. Thanks everyone for your time and interest today. Just making sure everyone can hear me okay? Okay, great. So welcome to our NOAA Central Library seminar for today. We're going to be discussing economic valuation trainings and project consultations, some lessons learned over the past year and a half and much longer for Kate. On sort of our experience going through this process and conversations we're having and things we're hearing, just to really start the conversation and move the needle on how we use economics more effectively in our day-to-day work. So as you can see, there we are. Thanks, Katie, for the introduction. And of course, you know, I'll mention some trainings today. It's really been a broader effort. We rely heavily on the expertise of our learning management services team, both Beth Levitt, Kim Penn, Kenneth Rayner, Kenneth Walker, a lot of other folks in review capacity, Rachel Franks-Taylor, and so on in our office to really develop a lot of these trainings. So certainly there's a lot of effort behind there. So today we're going to start with goals for today, who we are and what we do, just the audience for our partners that we help, the motivation and economics questions that we hear communities asking us, trainings that we provide and technical assistance, or we sort of reframe as project consultation and give you examples of those. Kate's going to go into a lot of lessons learned that we've observed and sort of collated over the past years, both in hurdles, challenges, just general feedback we're hearing and observations. And just to start the conversation on identifying what are some long-term strategies, how do we move forward, where do we go from here, what are some challenges and opportunities moving forward. Next slide. Okay, so like I said, I think we're all really here, and Kate and I, when we were sort of developing this and sort of talking about this and mulling over this over impromptu coffee chats and phone calls over the past year plus, was really just to start a dialogue on laying out just the types of economic requests that we are hearing from communities and our partners. And with that, to share lessons learned based on a lot of these trainings that we offer, that we've developed and we are developing. So I'll mention one that we are developing, and technical assistance projects that we have provided to communities. So the idea here is really to if we can continuously, iteratively share feedback, it's just that much easier for the next economic study we do, right? And then finally, to provide ideas on future efforts to better enable communities to use economics and maybe lay the groundwork for potential collaborative efforts. So who we are and what we do, we are economists. We are part of a small economics group spearheaded by our fearless leader, Kate Quigley here, 4 of us in the Office for Coastal Management, and we provide trainings, tools, and resources to non-economists to help them understand economic terminology, concepts, methodology, research, a new case study, find data, how to estimate economic value, really the whole gamut. If you want to use economics in the coastal realm, we would love to help, and often we are brought into those conversations. We also run and support 2 blue economy accounts and data on national, state, and local level for measuring the blue and marine economy. We also conduct and support and initiate economic valuation research projects and studies. Just a quick sense for a quick look at Office for Coastal Management for our friends across NOAA, whether you're in fisheries or weather service or elsewhere. So we sit, Office for Coastal Management, we sit within the National Ocean Service, and that's just sort of a screen grab of our website there. I'm sure you all are familiar with the Digital Coast, for example, or our National Coastal Zone Management Program. But these are sort of the driving forces for the 4 areas for where we apply our research and offer data and support. So with that, who is our audience? We help a lot of different partners. Our target audience here, particularly for the economic support, guidance, help, data provisioning, et cetera, really runs the gamut. So we help local and state government staff that are applying for federal funding. And that funding could be from FEMA, from Department of Transportation, whether it's through MARAD, the RAISE grants, HUD, et cetera. We also help NOAA and partner staff hiring consultants to do economic analyses, so we support those studies. We help folks looking for economic information to help tell their story. This might be staff from within the Coastal Zone Management Program, NGOs, or consultants. Often, more lately, we're hearing from engineering consultants. And just really generally non-economists receiving or wanting to consume economic information or products or data, especially with a focus on valuing ecosystem goods and services, and really just folks wanting to try and figure out how the heck do they do that. So we have in a lot of these conversations and emails we get, just to really set the stage here in the background and the impetus for our chat today, we hear a lot of questions dealing with economics. And just like every other discipline, I would really not know the best questions to ask to an ecologist. I can sort of tiptoe my way through it, being at NOAA for so long and having a lot of grad courses in that. But we hear a lot of a demand and need for economics with questions we're being asked. And this really, it runs from that first bullet there, what's the economic value of the Great Lakes? We certainly hear an interest in things like that, to how do you value educational or outreach or collaboration activities, right? Can we put a dollar value on this? And I would say, as an economist, you can, and I've seen some of that work, particularly from our friends at Office for National Marine Sanctuaries. They've done this, and elsewhere. How do you value a program or a product? Like how can you estimate what the impact is for that? Or things like we've done a technical assist on valuing ecotourism that supports a nature preserve. We've also are hearing a lot lately on how do you estimate value for ecosystem goods and services, and how do you include those line items of value within a broader economic analysis, such as a benefit cost analysis, because this matters when you're trying to get funding through a federal discretionary grant program. As well, where do I get data to estimate those co-benefits in the first place if you're not going to carry out your own unique study? So can you borrow data from somewhere else? And where do you even find that data in the first place, let alone what to do with it? And to say you have an input-output analysis, can you include that within the benefit cost analysis? How does that even marry with another economic analysis? So really it can, your head can spin with all of these questions, but that's really where we fit in, is to try and help people sort of muddy their way through these economic waters. So this is just to drive home that a little bit more. So take wetlands, for example. So say we, in our different line offices or in another agency or elsewhere, we're interested in looking at wetlands and looking at the economics of wetlands, and we're interested in trying to put some sort of dollar value on that. As you can see, I don't need to read this whole slide, but this is just to illustrate to you how you ask your question. And this is something we'll get into that we share with our partners in our trainings. How you ask the specific question and what you're trying to get out of it really matters. And so, you know, perhaps I'm wearing my academic hat here, but this really sets up the stage for where you're going to go with that analysis. And as you can see, if you're just interested in the general benefits, something we would maybe point you to is a literature review, maybe a meta-analysis, maybe an interview, which is really the precursor to any sort of economic study. But if you're interested in looking at something like the least costly option, we might point you to a cost effectiveness analysis, or if you're looking for the return on investment, we would point you to a benefit cost analysis. So this is just to illustrate, you could have, you know, 5, 6 folks in the room all wanting to do economics for wetlands, and how you approach it really can shape the life of the study and the project and your outcomes. So with these questions and this demand, we are responding, and we are developing a lot of resources and offering a wide technical assist effort and guidance documents and the like. So over the past year and a half, we have developed, and longer, we have developed several trainings, both in person and virtual, and some of those have certifications with them. So the first is economics guidance for coastal management professionals. And we have offered this now, I would say 6 or 8 times, something like that, over the past year and a half. And it's just really the general gist of it is to allow participants to understand, to help them better understand basic economic terminology, because the concepts can be a bit scary or unknown. Provide participants with a better way to identify their approaches based on their objectives for their analysis or their study, and the level of expertise they have available on their staff, and funding, because all of these constraints will also shape where you go with an analysis, right? Help you to support tools and data, as well as conceptualize questions that would be helpful for you if you are going to hire an economics consultant or an expert. And I think in total we've had now 500 or so folks attend this training over the past year or so. So in this training, this is one of the, Kate goes into this, so we start out, just to give you a sense, we start out with this infographic here, and it's just to give you a sense of the lay of the land. We give participants an idea that, look, economics allows you ways to answer and inform how to make decisions. That's inherently, it's a discipline of making trade-offs and decisions given limited resources, whether it's time, budget, knowledge, certainty, etc. And so what this does is it gives folks just a quick one-stop shop to get started on connecting their objective at the top, whether it's they want to tell a story about benefits, they want to show benefits for a particular project, they want to compare projects with similar benefits, say you want to just see if a benefit will exceed a cost, say you're looking on how to estimate project spending and how that impacts the economy around you, does it create jobs? Or just show value, just, you know, do an accounting exercise and show the value for that. And what this does is on the schematic below, generally speaking, it's, you know, don't hold us to that. It's not, it's an art just as much as a science, but generally speaking, as you move left to right, sort of increases in time, maybe expertise needed, maybe software needed. But this shows you there are a lot of different methodologies available to you depending on the objective you want for your economic analysis. With that, then in the training, I go and I show this schematic, and not to confuse you, but essentially you can imagine that this is sort of nested and it builds off of that other one. So all of those, whether say benefit cost analysis, allows us to inform or allows us a way to inform decision making about what decision should we do, what project is best. In that analysis, you need benefits and you need values for benefits. And often, as we find ourselves in the natural, environmental, ecological realm, those benefits are just diffuse and sometimes very difficult to not only quantify, but monetize. And that's where my background and my training is in. And so environmental economists have, we do this. And so this is a similar schematic enlisting methodologies and economic approaches that you can use to investigate and get at those benefits listed there on the top, whether you're looking at building a project and bolstering the resilience for a community, and so that second column there, you want a project to provide coastal flood protection or hazard mitigation. This would you could look into this infographic or have a conversation with us, and we would point you to some of those methodologies down below there. So these are just two handy guides that we've developed as a part of a broad swath of guidance documents and trainings, as I've mentioned, to help you just start to get started and frame your thinking. We also provide a training on estimating your local marine economy and telling your story. And this is a 1 to 2 day training, and it's instructor led. It's in person, but last year we tweaked it now virtually. So it allows folks to describe their coastal and marine economy for their community using economic data and local knowledge, and identify industries vulnerable to coastal hazards, and also tell just the end product is we're trying to help you to tell a compelling story with economic data and information for your community. So we also offer this one as well, now virtually. Again, definitely check all of these out. We're not here just to show you all the trainings, but is really just to drive home that we're offering a lot of these resources and hearing these conversations on the ground. But we also offer now, last year, a self-guided economic module that builds off of the webinar for coastal management professionals that I mentioned earlier, in that it's self-paced. You could take a couple hours, grab a cup of coffee, and just go in here, and you start with the self-assessment, and then it points you to considering your economic objective for your project, and then it allows you to dive in, because that first webinar I mentioned is sort of, it gives you a 40,000 foot view. What's the universe of economic possibility really? And then this says, okay, I want to do a benefit cost analysis. What actually is it? What are the specific data I need? And what are the specific steps? How do I actually go about doing this? So this is sort of a 2.0, if you will. And then I'll cover this slide and then hand it over to Kate. But we do have a, in responding to, and she'll elaborate on this more, but we have reacted and responded to a lot of partners interested and having a need and demand for developing benefit cost analyses for in response to resilience related, infrastructure related federal discretionary grant program funding. And so we are developing a 1-day course on benefit cost analysis, and due out later this year. I don't want to put a date on that. We were just talking about that the other day. But generally speaking, where we want to go with this is to help folks better understand, how do I estimate ecosystem goods and service benefits and incorporate them into the benefit cost analysis? Because again, as I mentioned earlier, that's where a lot of folks struggle, and then that ends up being perhaps your benefit cost analysis, benefit cost ratio isn't going to look the way you need it to look to get the funding if you're not including the benefits for the project. Or what if you don't have the data for your area? Can you estimate that in some way? How do you incorporate equity now in benefit cost analysis? And how do you capture uncertain future conditions given our changing climate? So I'll hand it over to Kate now, and then we'll go to lessons learned after that and a Q&A. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm going to do the second half of this presentation. Just want to say a couple words about providing technical assistance and valuation. So we do provide technical assistance. As Lauren said, it's more project consultation where we help direct people to the correct resources, but also give a little bit of organizational assistance to them and maybe some clues about different economic analysis methods that they might want to look into. Here's just a few examples of folks that we've been chatting with and helping out. As you can see, they want a number of different things. Some people need a review of their benefit cost analysis. Others need evaluation of a particular ecosystem service, such as Mispillion Creek there. Internal reviews of various documents, economic portion of various projects internally within OCM. Rhode Island Sea Grant, we help them do evaluation of the state's blue economy. We have an economic accounting, regional economic accounting methodology for that, where we use eNow or Economics National Ocean Watch data. And that comes in handy also with blue tech clusters that are trying to get underway. Sometimes they want that industry data and different indicator information about various industry data. We've also had several evaluation studies within OCM most recently. Been working with the Corals program and providing them support in doing economic valuation for corals along with a contractor. And so we're really excited about that because that involves lots of ecosystem service valuation. Okay, so on to some lessons learned. So we're offering all of these trainings to our various partners, and you saw that it's pretty diverse who we're offering trainings and assistance to, and we're getting all sorts of different questions and people are confused about economics. So what are some of the lessons learned? What are we hearing? What are the conclusions that we're kind of drawing that direct us to future endeavors? Well, first, there's a lot of confusion about how to get started. So our partners are struggling with defining an economic objective even, or question of interest having to do with economics. So for the first time ever, we've got non-economists doing economic analysis, or at least trying to come up with a project and directing an economic consultant or an engineering consultant to do that economic analysis. So this is the first time this has really happened. Usually, historically, it's been an economist doing that work, but now we've got towns who cannot afford to hire an economist, and so they're putting in grant applications that require a benefit cost analysis without a whole lot of assistance. Sometimes you've got state folks helping you to do it, but sometimes they are not economists either. So we get questions like, what method is appropriate for advocacy? So sometimes they're not submitting an application to FEMA or to HUD or other funding sources. Instead, they're just trying to advocate sometimes for their industry. And so the method that you're going to use, the economic method you're going to use, depends on your audience. So sometimes people will say, well, we really want to use some economic information for advocacy. How do we do this? We think we need a benefit cost analysis. Well, you don't need a benefit cost analysis for that. You need a different type of economic analysis. People just hear about a benefit cost analysis or an economic impact analysis so much that they think that, well, that's what I need. So we try to give them a heads up that you may not need that. We get people asking, yes, if you need a BCA or if an economic valuation is sufficient. They don't really know the difference. What methods are usable and not usable in a BCA? Lauren mentioned that earlier. What methods can be used to compare across alternatives? People want to do program, product, and project valuation. And for all of those things, the methods that you use do differ slightly, but most of all, partners are really struggling with what is their economic question. And when they ask their economic question, are you using the terminology that means what you think it means? And as Lauren said, these types of graphics and the training, the first training that she covered, really try to get at that. So first, they're trying to form their economic objective. They struggle with that. They also struggle with terminology because a lot of it is confusing. So people are often confused about terminology and sometimes use terms in incorrect, overlapping, or conflicting ways, or they use it in a very, very general way. But economists are thinking in a very specific way about what that term means. So just some examples here. When people talk about benefits, Other people use the term co-benefits or positive environmental externalities. These are all pretty much the same thing. People use the term cost effectiveness, and what they mean is a benefit cost analysis, but cost effectiveness is used by other agencies and other economists as something different from a benefit cost analysis. So FEMA uses the term cost effectiveness analysis and what they're referring to as a benefit cost analysis, but some economists don't use that terminology. There's also the terminology of an economic impact. Lots of people want to see an economic impact analysis, but they think that means a benefit cost analysis or return on investment. It doesn't mean those things. It's referring to an input-output analysis. There's also confusion sometimes about the term blue economy. We have this new term called new blue economy, and then there's blue economy. People can mean very different things. Some people mean blue economy meaning economic development activities. Other people are talking about regional economic accounting, and sometimes you're talking about ocean technology. So that can be confusing. There's also a lack of economics expertise means picking a methodology that could yield unexpected results. So often people do not get outputs desired or anticipated because they don't really know what that methodology is. So for example, a very popular term or very popular methodology used to be value streams or value chain analysis. But sometimes strictly a value chain analysis doesn't always mean that you're going to get numbers. So that can be confusing. Again, cost effectiveness analysis is, to most economists, is not the same thing as a BCA. A contribution analysis is a type of input-output analysis, but it's very general. It's not project. You don't get project-specific results. Well, obviously, non-economists don't know some of this stuff. An economic impact analysis is not a BCA or an ROI. An ROI is a specific BCA output. So anyway, there's lots of ways that you can get, non-economists can get confused very, very easily. Also, you know, what can socioeconomic indicators be used for? Is that an economic analysis? What do you use them for? And then we've got this new thing where we've got environmental accounting that's been underway by the federal government. You know, what is that? What is benefits transfer? So lots of economic terms being thrown around, and without economic expertise, it's really hard to keep track of what these things are. Even if you, people get frustrated with the output, so even when you choose an appropriate methodology for the economic question that you're asking, some people are very confused by the output that they receive. A lot of people want big numbers. Sometimes the numbers don't look as big as you think that they should. That depends on the analysis that is done. You're going to get bigger numbers for some analyses than for others. Also, not everything is monetizable. So lots of people think that economists can do that, and economists cannot always do that. So some things are just difficult to value in dollar terms. So things like collaboration and coordination have a lot of value, but we can't always put a dollar value on that. In fact, we can rarely do so. Valuation of education and training, so we use proxies to put dollar values on, but it's only a partial value. So these are all very conservative values. Lots of times for valuation of education and training, you need to find case studies where decisions were made based on the knowledge that you gathered from that training, from that education. That's hard to find. And it ends up being a case study. So it's not a full comprehensive type analysis. And very often people want values of various services to be summed together into one number, and you can't always do that. Lots of times the analysis results in a range of numbers, as you can't always add those together. Fifth, some values are not easy to monetize, as we've mentioned before, and have been historically left out. Well, what happens when you leave those numbers out? So first of all, why do these things happen? This is increasingly apparent when thinking about cultural valuation or cultural categories of ecosystem goods and services. Social scientists, anthropologists, economists differ on terms and how to categorize ecosystem services. So that's problem number one, or challenge number one. but we all agree that these things have value. And then traditionally economists though think in dollars and non-economists think in numbers or words. And so what we need to do is collaborate and talk to each other more to find a way forward so that we can combine those things. We can have things that are monetized in dollars, and then we can have value that is expressed in other ways. And this is a problem though, or a challenge, for the simple reason that if certain values are left out because they don't have a dollar value associated with them, then they're not going to be able to be talked about perhaps as benefits. So if you're doing a benefit cost analysis for FEMA or for HUD or for someone else, for DOT, and you're not able to monetize those benefits, some people will think that no value exists when really it does. And so what we always encourage is that if you cannot monetize it, then you need to describe it so that it can get attention. But if people don't accept qualitative results or quantitative results versus monetizing dollar values, then those benefits in a benefit cost analysis are going to be lower than they would otherwise be. And when those aren't counted, number one, inequities result, but also those projects are not going to be approved and funding given to those projects. So for certain projects like nature-based solutions or NBS, those projects may not get funded if you cannot quantify, specifically monetize the ecosystem service values that come out of those nature-based solutions. And as a result, those projects don't get funded, and our world looks very different than it would otherwise if those projects were approved. So just a couple quick takeaways. We've mentioned several of these, but challenges and opportunities remain. So the desire to rank projects using economics, so rank whether a project should get funding or should not get funding, using economic analyses like benefit cost analyses, means that there's an increase in requests for help with economic valuation. And just in general, the increases in federal funding also increase requests for help. So for the first time, as I mentioned before, a large number of non-economists, so lots of engineers and others, are tasked with doing and reviewing economic analyses like benefit cost analyses and valuation outputs. From what we've taken a look across the internet, we do not see free trainings to do economic valuation or ecosystem service valuation or benefit cost analysis for non-economists. And so we are really trying to fill that gap. Even for economists, those things are not free. So we are trying to fill that gap for our partners. Traditional methods and discount rates don't always work well for new strategies to tackle climate change, such as nature-based solutions or NBS, because benefits take a long time to accrue for some nature-based solutions or nature-based strategy type projects. And the discount rates very often are a bit too high to capture those benefits. So there are also new ways of thinking about that are emerging, such as how to incorporate in local and indigenous knowledge into benefit cost analyses and into economic analyses. And so economists are learning. We are learning from those people that are much more knowledgeable than we are about that type of thing. So social scientists and anthropologists and those with local and indigenous knowledge, we need their collaboration. So there's lots of collaboration between economists and social scientists and local experts. And this is sometimes can be uncomfortable for economists because it's hard to learn new things, right? But we need to do that. So there needs to be more collaboration so that we can find ways to incorporate those values, those narratives about values or oral histories or quantifying things instead of monetizing things, and incorporate those into benefit cost analyses or economic analyses in some way. So what we can do, what can we do? We can provide more technical assistance, trainings, education. We can manage expectations about what economists can and can't do. We can provide our partners with knowledge upfront about what outputs will come out of any given methodology. We want them to know the benefits and trade-offs of going with a given approach. So just because it says return on investment, and that sounds like a really good thing, or economic impact, doesn't mean it's going to tell the whole story. It tells part of the story. So an economic analysis can be informative, but it is one portion of information that goes into decision making. We can help people that consult with an economist or a colleague, and we encourage you to consult with an economist or a colleague who knows economics early and often, just to make sure there's no mix-ups with terminology or with what you might get from a particular methodology. We try to help people with knowing what questions to ask consultants and the terminology that they use, and we want to see more collaboration and share lessons learned. And so our question to you, I know that we might have a couple questions, but that are being asked of us, but our question to you is, what community needs for economic valuation analyses have you heard? Are people coming to you and asking questions and wanting economic analyses, and they don't know where to get that information or how to get it without lots of money and engaging with an economic consulting firm? And we'd like to hear from you. You know, what are your organization's needs internally for economics? So with that, here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to talk about this topic further. We welcome your comments and we welcome your questions. With that, I'm just going to see if there's any questions. I can't see them, but I believe Katie was going to read off and see if there's any questions for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren and Kate. This was so informational, and coming from the library, we have been asked these similar questions, saying, can you do a literature review to find if there's, any economic benefits to rebuilding a coral reef? And, we ourselves are not economists, but we often ask you, or we, do our best to get this information. This was very educational for me, so thank you for this wonderful presentation. While people are typing in their questions, I do have a few of my own. In what capacity are you supporting FEMA and other federal agencies with their applications for federal funds, or with their applicants who are applying for federal funds?
That's a great question. Thanks, Katie. To start us off, so we do not have an official support role with FEMA or HUD or DOT or with any of the other folks that are requiring economic analyses for our partners to apply for federal funds from those agencies. But we are seeing a gap that is out there, and we are trying to fill it for our Digital Coast partners and for all of our NOAA partners. So we don't operate an official support capacity, but we are trying to educate people so that they have a bit of a heads up about what they need to do when applying for a benefit cost analysis. I will say that our forthcoming benefit cost analysis training is agnostic. It does not focus on one particular type of benefit cost analysis, but we will provide examples and details on what FEMA requires, what HUD requires, what DOT requires, and how they differ from each other, and how some of the terminology might differ.
Great, thanks so much, Kate. I'm assuming that this is part of your kind of outreach efforts, but are there, giving this presentation, but are there other avenues of outreach that you all are exploring?
Yeah, so we very often will ask our partners at DOT and others to include announcements of our trainings in their newsletters. We have our own communications, our wonderful communications staff and learning services staff in each of the various regions of the nation that will broadcast through social media and keep our partners informed of the trainings and the guidance documents and other resources that we have available. We also will sometimes do trainings at various conferences. So in the upcoming National Working Waterfronts Conference in July in Boston, Our colleagues Gabe Sadeloff and Ravi Chatilla will be doing a training there on regional economic accounting. So that is more the storytelling piece using economic data. So we try to do all sorts of different outreach. I don't know, Lauren, if I'm missing some, but we also have everything posted on Digital Coast. So if you just go ahead, for those who are unfamiliar with it, if you just type in Digital Coast NOAA, our website will come up with all of our tools, trainings, resources. And I will mention that we're not the only ones. It's not just the economists putting out training information. We also have wonderful colleagues that have trainings on nature-based solutions and on how to talk about risk, how to facilitate meetings, how to do social science, so how to do focus groups, how to do surveys and interviews. We have all sorts of trainings on there that are all free that you're welcome to take a look at and sign up for.
Great, thanks, Kate. In that vein, if we are aware of an internal group of NOAA employees that may be interested in the economic guidance for coastal management professionals, is there a way to request this training, and is there a cost associated with that?
Yeah, I'll let Lauren handle that since she hasn't answered any of the questions yet.
As I'm scrambling to find the unmute button. Thanks so much, Kate, and for those wonderful questions, Katie. So yes, we do offer the training. It's free, of course. Well, there is no such thing as a free lunch, but it is in a true economist fashion. That's what I would say. But it is free to participants, and there's the link there. So we don't have the next offering up, but certainly as you described in your question, we offer this in a hosted format. So typically we have done that with a particular subset of folks, whether it's with a couple folks with a National Estuarine Research Reserve or a particular state or region. Then if that happens, what we like to do is provide case studies or specific economic examples that are tailored for that group. So whether it's, okay, here's an example of an economic impact analysis in the coastal realm, in the Midwest, for example. So if we're speaking to Midwest folks. So definitely check that out there. We could just shoot us an email and we could set up that hosted training if you have a group of, whether it's an office or associated with a NER or just some other group. So we definitely provide that hosted training. And I'll also mention to the last question as well with the outreach in particular, I dropped that second to last link in there for our corals valuation project that Kate mentioned. So I am also support Kate in our office and all economics across the office, and in particular this coral reef valuation study. So we do have a specific page for that there. And eventually the outputs will be, of course, all updated numbers for the values of coral reefs. But in particular, we're going to have story maps, perhaps some videos explaining the values. So just in terms of outreach, I especially wanted to flag that website for that study there.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, do your training programs cover economic requirements under NEPA?
So I worked for many years doing economic analysis within NEPA, but we are not experts in that area. So we usually consult others when people ask questions about specific requirements under NEPA. So we do not address that specifically. However, we are more than happy to collaborate and work with NEPA specialists to get that information. We usually don't tackle that in our training specifically, but very happy to add that information in. That's just something that we haven't done yet.
Great, thanks. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I have one. What can the audience listening and future audiences, what can they do to either spread this message, or how best can they share about these trainings and your lessons learned?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have at least one pager coming out soon that is a description of all of our trainings. Also refers to data and other resources that we have available, such as a self-guided training online. So we have a description of all of our trainings, a one-pager. We should have that available in maybe a couple of weeks, I think, Lauren. So if that's something that you would like to have available to you or your organization, please go ahead and just email us, and at least you can see there a little bit of an overview of our trainings instead of watching this webinar again. So that would be wonderful if you want to spread the word, or just ping us. We have a number of little postcards that we can provide and that you can use if you would like to broadcast in newsletters or on your website. That would be super, much appreciated.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate and Lauren. I am not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to give everybody back some time in their day. But I want to thank our audience for being here. Thank again, Kate and Lauren, for a fabulous presentation. I'll remind everyone we recorded this, so if you do want to rewatch it or share it with a colleague, embed it on your website, you can all do that from the library's YouTube channel. With that, I hope everyone has a safe and healthy rest of their Wednesday. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you.